Betrayed. Broken, reborn. This is Novel Binge.
The night at Baisha Night Market, a 3 million yuan high-grade stone was cut open and failed completely. The young master of the Gu family slammed an admission of liability in front of me, forcing me to take the fall for him. Everyone said I was just like my father, a swindlers in the jade gambling world, but they had no idea that hidden among that pile of discarded waste was the truth behind my father's disappearance 3 years ago. When that 3 million Y stone was cut open and failed, Baisha Jade Gambling Night Market fell silent for 3 seconds. The stone cutting machine was still spinning. Water from the hose mixed with stone powder in the iron tray, washing the broken fragments into a pale gray mess. That high-ice jade material that Gu Chengxiao had been bragging about all night turned out to be full of cracks, laced with cotton peppered with impurities. Forget 3,300,000 is still too expensive. Zhao Qisen, an out-of-town merchant, stood before the stone-cutting table, the flesh on his face twitching twice. The next second, he kicked over the stool beside him. Gu Chengxiao. His voice was hoarse and frightening. "You're selling me this piece of trash for 30 million. The people around them immediately stepped back. At the Baisha Night Market, people struck it rich every day, but they also lost everything just as often. A 3 million loss like that wasn't exactly common. Not to mention, this rough stone was personally recommended by Gu Chengxiao, the young master of Baisha Jade Works. Gu Chengxiao stood under the light, the sleeves of his black shirt rolled up, his wristwatch gleaming dazzlingly. He didn't even glance at the pile of waste. He looked at me. Lu Chen. I was crouched in the corner, tidying up the chalk. When I heard him call my name, my fingers paused for a moment. The night market lights were very bright. The oil fumes from the barbecue stalls, the mist from the stone-cutting machines, and the white glare of the live streaming lights all mingled together. When I looked up, 2 security guards had already pushed through the crowd from behind, one on each side. They clamped down on my shoulders. I frowned. "Mr. Giyu, what do you mean by that?" Gu Chengxiao let out a faint smile. He took a piece of paper from his assistant, walked over to me, and slapped it down on the stone-cutting table. Before this material was traded, did you inspect it? Zhao Qisen spun his head around abruptly. Who is he? Someone immediately chimed in. Lu Chen, that temporary stone appraiser at Baisha Night Market, the one who evaluates sealed materials for walk-in customers. Isn't his father Lu Qiming, the one who ran off 3 years ago after losing a bet? Yay, that is him. Deep in debt up to his neck. Voices pressed in, layer upon layer, like gravel hammering against sheet metal. I stared at Gu Chengxiao. That is not the piece I examined. The smile on Gu Chengxiao's face faded slightly. What did you say? I said, that piece in the warehouse is a yellow salt sand, shell tight skin stone, weighing 42.5 kilograms. This one here, the rind is dry, and the weight is off. Zhao Qisen immediately turned toward Gu Chengxiao. What does he mean by that? Gu Chengxiao didn't look at him. He only stared at me, his gaze turning cold. Lu Chen, think carefully before you speak. He pushed the paper toward me. I saw the words at the very top. Liability acknowledgement. Below it is written, due to a misjudgment by the appraiser Lu Chen, the client Zhao Qisen suffered significant losses after purchasing rough H stones. Lu Chen voluntarily assumes primary responsibility. At the very bottom, in the compensation amount column, 3 million. I smiled slightly, unable to resist. Gu Chengxiao's brows furrowed. What is so funny? You don't even bother to heat up the pot before dumping the pot on me. The security guard exerted force with his hand. A shiver ran down my shoulder blades. Zhao Qisen rushed over and grabbed me by the collar of my shirt. Did you even look at it or not? He was choking me so hard enough to the point where my I say, tightened, but I didn't dodge. I saw the one in the warehouse. That wasn't the stone that was cut. Where is the evidence? Gu Chengxiao answered the call quickly. Fai. Lu Chen, you say the material was swapped. What is your evidence? I didn't answer, because I don't have evidence right now. I can only tell by listening. I could tell this wasn't the piece I had Endel. But such words would find no believers in Baisha Night Market. Gu Chengxiao also knew that no one would believe it. He bent down and placed the pen beside my hand. Sign it. I looked up at him. Gu Chengxiao's voice was not loud, but it carried a firm, steady weight. Your father still owes Baisha 1.76 million so far. The prepayment for your mother's dialysis is also being covered by the Giyu family hospital. He paused for a moment. Lu Chen, don't let your mother have nowhere to lie down tomorrow. The surroundings suddenly grew much quieter. Ning Wan's live streaming phone was still propped nearby. On the big screen, comments flew by rapidly. Chendi, 30 million who can afford to pay that? Peichao, but isn't he just a scapegoat? Ayan? Not necessarily. His father had run father into trouble before. The stakes at Baisha Night Market are deeper than ever. Deeper. Baisha. Ning Wan is a streamer at Baisha Night Market. She usually promotes goods for the Giyu family, with a sweet voice and quick-witted voice. But right now, her hand holding the phone was a bit stiff. The camera was aimed right at my face. I saw myself on the screen. My face was dusted with stone powder, my collar wrinkled collar, and red-rimmed eyes. I looked like a con artist, caught red-handed. Gu Chengxiao pushed the pen another half-inch forward. ND. Sign. I didn't move. Not. His voice lowered. Your father was the same back then. The rough was cut and failed, but he wouldn't accept it. The debts piled up and he ran. What? Is the son? Are you going to do the same? My knuckles slowly tightened. My dad Lu Qiming has been missing for 3 years. In these 3 years, whenever people at the Baisha night mark, ET always been just one about him. He lost big. He was in. Ran off. Every time my mother heard it, her condition worsened. I've explained it too. No one listened. In the world of gambling on raw stones, only the results matter. Price hike is called good judgment. Seeing it flop is called fate. Owing debts and disappearing after debt is being a swin. DL. I locked eyes with Gu Chengxiao and slowly spoke. I want to re-examine the raw materials. Gu Chengxiao looked as if he had just heard a joke. It has already been cut. What else do you want to see? Look at the cross-section. Zhao Qisen gritted his teeth. Let him see. Gu Chengxiao glanced at Zhao Qisen. Zhao Qisen's forehead, veins were bulging. 10 million taels are staked here, and Gu Chengxiao can't stop it on the spot. He raised his hand. The security guard let me go. I walked over to the stone cutting table. The pile of gray-white crushed material lay spread out on the iron tray, still wet. I picked up the old bronze ruler beside me. The copper ruler was left by my father. The edges were worn smooth, with a few faint scratches on it. I gently tapped the cross-section with my ruler. Thud. The sound is muffled. I changed my angle again. Thud. Sembai-ak. Still. Muffled. The third time, I knocked on the edge of the crack zone. The scattered sound faded away. I crouched down, leaning my ear close to the cut surface. Someone nearby laughed. SD Estawe, putting on a show. It is already cut open. What is there to listen to? His dad always liked this kind of mystical stuff. I ignored it. What I heard was an echo. The yellow salt sandstone in the warehouse. I had touched it and tapped it as well. The skin was tight. The sound was tight. The sound clear, with a straight crack running through the ER but not spreading inside. Now this piece has floating cracks and a dry meat base, like a stone that has been soaked in artifacts, has been soaked in water, and then dried out. It is not the same piece. I stood up. This piece has been swapped. The scene erupted. Zhao Qisen abruptly turned to look at Gu Chengxiao. You tampered with the material. Gu Chengxiao's expression remained unchanged. He even smiled. Lu Chen, biting back on the brink of death. How pathetic. I said, check the surveillance footage. Sure. He replied too quickly, so fast that my heart sank. Gu Chengxiao turned to his assistant and said, pull up the warehouse surveillance footage. Soon, the big screen changed the picture. In the surveillance footage, I stood in front of the shelves of the Baisha warehouse. Gu Chengxiao and Zhao Qisen were both there. I reached out and touched a piece of raw material. Yellow salt skin, yellow salt sand. That's right. In the next shot, I drew a line on the stone with chalk. In the following segment, a forklift carried the stone out of the warehouse. The timestamp in the top right corner of the screen flicked forward. 19:27 分, jump. 19:31分. I spoke. 4 minutes are missing in between. The assistant immediately said, it is an old signal issue in the warehouse. Everyone at the night market knows that. Ning Wan said instinctively, the live stream lagged just now too. Gu Chengxiao glanced at her. She swallowed the rest of her words. Gu Chengxiao turned around, looking at me with deliberate slowness. In the surveillance footage, you touched the material. I said, 4 minutes are missing. Then prove that someone swapped the material was swapped during those 4 minutes. I said nothing. He laughed. If you can't prove it, then sign. Zhao Qisen clenched his fist so tightly that his knuckles cracked. I don't care whose problem it is. I paid my money in Baisha. Tonight, either give me back my money, or give me someone who can take responsibility. Gu Chengxiao nodded. Baisha will take care of it. Having said that, he turned to look at me. Lu Chen says he didn't misjudge, so give him a chance to prove it. As soon as those words left his mouth, I knew he still had more cards to play. Gu Chengxiao pointed toward the shed at the back in the night market. Piles of rejected materials were stacked there. The burlap sacks were stacked one on top of another, mud-caked on the outside, some still tied with old seals at the opening. The burlap sacks were stacked one on top of another, mud-caked on the outside, and some still had old seals tied at the openings. Everyone in Baisha night market knew that it was a pile of crap. The leftovers, the cutoffs, the returns, the ones that showed no promise, all of it was dumped there. Gu Chengxiao said, Aaron, don't you have the skills? Go pick a piece from the scrap pile. The scrap. Someone laughed out loud. Scrap pile? Can you really find anything valuable in there? More like picking out a limestone egg. Gu Chengxiao was in no hurry. Pick one piece, cut it on the spot. If it shows gain, I'll postpone the liability agreement and pull the full warehouse records you want. He looked at me, his voice softening slightly. If it shows loss, you lose. You sign the 3 million liability agreement and get out of Baisha. Your father's old debts will settle tonight. This is not self-exoneration. This is forcing me to die. I looked toward the scrap shed. One of the lights was broken. casting half light and half shadow. A gust of wind rustled the old seal on the sack's opening. Old Joe stood by the stone-cutting machine, a cigarette dangling from his lips, his face ashen with tension. He was the oldest stone-cutting master in Baisha. When my father was still around, he used to call him Brother Joe. In these 3 years, he never helped me, nor did he ever step on me. At most, we'd nod at each other in passing. Now, he suddenly said in a low voice, "Lu Chen, don't touch that pile." Gu Chengxi, Gu Chengxiao heard that. "Uncle Joe, what are you afraid of?" he said with a smile. Lu Qiming's son can't be afraid to even look at waste material. Old Joe said nothing more. I held the copper ruler in my hand and walked toward the scrap shed. Behind him, footsteps were everywhere. Ningwan's livestream light followed me. Her voice was tight. Now Lu Chen has to pick stones from Baisha's discarded pile to prove himself. Everyone, tonight things are getting bigger and bigger. I crouched in front of the first sack. The bag was damp and sticky. I moved the stones out of it, one by one. The first one had loose skin, was loose. Tap it, hollow sound. Second piece, riddled with cracks. His voice shattered, like broken porcelain. The third piece had some loose pine spots on the surface, but the base was scattered, texture ran deep within. The fourth piece was even worse. The weight felt off just holding it in hand. The onlookers began to grow impatient. Can he do it or not? He's just stalling for time. It's just a scrap heap. What could he even find? Gu Chengxiao pulled up a chair and sat down. Lu Chen, half an hour. I didn't lift my head. The bronze ruler fell onto the stone skin. Once. Twice. A light tap. A heavy tap. Tapping at the edges, tapping at the back. Many people look at the skin, the jade. Look at the brute. Look at the pine flowers. Examining the skin. My father appraised stones by listening first. He said the shell could be fake, the light could deceive, a deceiver, and the tails of the mining pits, all fabricated. But the direction of the cracks within the stone, where the path water had seeped through, whether the flesh was loose the moment a blade touched it, the sound would betray everything in its sound. As a child, I found him annoying. He said, "The day no one believes you, stop listening to people." When I knocked on the 13th piece, Old Joe suddenly gave a cough, a very faint cough. I looked up. His gaze fell on the burlap sack by my hand. That burlap sack was older than the others, with only half a seal left at the opening. There was a bit of blue paint on the seal. I dragged the sack out. A gray-black wrapped stone was pressed at the of the sack. About 10 kilograms. The rind is dead. No distinct vein patterns. No color patches. The surface looked unnaturally dry, as if someone had smeared a layer of ash powder over it. The stall owner nearby took one look and laughed. That dead parcel's still here. Last month, no one would take it even for 500. What lousy luck. Gu Chengxiao leaned back against the chair rest. Lu Chen, you're not really going to pick that, are you? I didn't answer. The bronze ruler landed on the edge of the dead spot. Thud. The sound was very low. Not hollow. It's deep. The sound was like the sound had fallen into the stone, bounced off something inside, and then come back. My fingers stopped. I'd heard this kind of echo before, a long time ago. My father placed a piece of waste jade material on the table and told me to close my eyes and listen. He said, "This sound dead on the surface, it is dead, but inside it may not be. Still, you can't rush to cut it. The moment you rush, the flesh shatters." Back then, I asked him what kind of material was so straw. NGE. He didn't answer. He only said not to touch it recklessly in the future. I picked up that dead-end jade block. The onlookers laughed even louder. Really going for the dead package? Are you crazy? I think he is already ready to sign. I placed the raw stone material on the cutting table. Gu Chengxiao walked over and glanced down. Are you sure? Confirmed. Quote. The stall owner paused for a moment. 800 then. Gu Chengxiao smirked. Baisha rules. The verification game doesn't take things for free. Lu Chen, pay the 800 yourself. I only have a little over 600 on me. There is also a hospital payment reminder text message in my phone. My mom has dialysis tomorrow morning. I stared at the balance, frozen for a moment. Someone in the crowd let out a low laugh. Can't even come up with 800. And you want to pay back 3 million. Old Joe suddenly pulled 200 yuan out of his apron pocket, slapped it onto the table. I'll lend it to him. Gu Chengxiao looked over. Uncle Joe is quite loyal tonight. Old Joe's face remained cold. Cut or not? Gu Chengxiao smirked. Cut. I had Old Joe start from the side. Gu Chengxiao immediately frowned. At this rate, how long will it take? I drew a short line on the side of the dead package with a piece of chalk. MBAC. Half a centimeter. Don't press down on the blade. Lu Chen. Gu Chengxiao's voice turned icy. You're not yet qualified to lecture on Baisha cutting techniques. I fixed my gaze on Old Joe. Follow my line. Old Joe secured the material, his hand pausing his hand on the switch. He asked in a low voice, "Are you sure you heard it right?" I said, "Start grinding first." Old Joe didn't ask further. The stone cutting machine started. As the whirring sound rose, the people around automatically took half a step back. The water hose was turned on. The blade touched the grayish-black stone crust. As the first layer of crust was scraped off, gray dust burst outward and the water instantly clouded over. Someone immediately laughed. See, this crust is lifeless. What could possibly be inside? Cut like this. Gu Gu Chengxiao crossed his arms, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Zhao Qisen said nothing. He stared at the cut surface. I'm watching too. The blade only cut into a very thin layer. The sound was rough, but beneath the roughness, a thin note held firm. It felt as if there was something inside the stone that hadn't shattered. A dozen seconds later, I raised my hand. Stop. Old Joe immediately stopped the machine. The water washed down. A small piece of the gray skin peeled away. Beneath the dull gray, a hint of pale green appeared. It was very faint, a light as fine as a needle scratch, but everyone present had seen it. The jeering stopped abruptly. The stall owner was the first to come closer. Exceptional, someone gasped. Could there really be something inside a dead husk? Ning Wan zoomed the camera in. The comments went wild. No way, it actually came out cyan. Is it just a thin layer of color? Young Master Gu's face just changed. The smile on Gu Chengxiao's face paused for a moment. A very brief moment, so brief that most people didn't notice. But I noticed. Zhao Qisen noticed it too. He asked coldly, and you call this waste? Gu Chengxiao quickly recovered his composure. A bit of color showing. There is plenty of thin skin color in rough jade. At that moment, a person walked in from outside the crowd, wearing a gray Zhongshan suit, holding a strong flashlight in hand. Qin Yan, Cloud River Jade Association, appraisal committee member. Bai Shui was in such chaos tonight, and it was he invited by Gu Chengxiao to calm things down. It wasn't surprising. Qin Yan walked up to the stone cutting table, shining a light on the streak of green. His brow furrowed slightly. Gu Chengxiao immediately asked, Commissioner Qin, what do you think? Is this a good sign of a rise? Qin Yan did not answer right away. He shone the light from different angles for a few seconds before speaking. It can only be said that it is not entirely waste material. The value is still hard to determine. Gu Chengxiao replied quickly. Hear that? Not entirely waste doesn't mean it is a win. He raised his hand, pointing to the middle of the dead package. Daidao, by convention, we cut here. Whether it contains anything of value, one slice will tell. I looked at the spot he pointed to. My heart sank. That line was pressing right on the most chaotic R. In terms of sound. If cut from there, the jade flesh that has just been exposed will be shattered by the crack line. More importantly, I saw it when I was rubbing the leather just now. The layer of dry powder on the surface of the dead parcel was not naturally weathered, like it was smeared on by human hands. It is hiding something. I said, you can't cut it like that. Gu Chengxiao smirked. Can't, huh? He turned to the onlookers. Did everyone hear that? Just now he said he'd prove himself but now that it's down to the wire, he can't. Someone chimed in, to stir things up. He must be feeling guilty, trying to fob me off, with just a hint of green. Cut deeper. What are you afraid of? I picked up the chalk again, and drew an arc on T. He sighed. Wipe from here, go around the crack. When old Joe saw that line, his expression shifted. Very subtle. He said in a low voice, this line. Gu Chengxiao snatched the chalk away and erase. D. My line directly. The stone cutting table of Bai Shui is not your home. I looked at him, afraid I'll cut something out. Gu Chengxiao paused mid-motion. The scene quieted down a bit. I said, you told me to pick from the scrap pile. Now I've picked it, wiped it to show the color, and you're in a rush to change the plan. Zhao Qisen immediately said, cut it as he says. Gu Chengxiao shot him a glance. President Zhao, every industry has its own rules. You can't let a temporary worker run wild. Zhao Qisen let out a cold laugh. Dayano, your industry rules mean I should spend 30 million on a pile of cracked cotton. Gu Chengxiao's face turned cold. The atmosphere tensed up. I took the liability waiver. NDD, Wentede, cut along my line. Gu Chengxiao looked at me. Did the gamble fail? I'll sign. I said, sign the 3 million liability waiver. He narrowed his eyes. It was supposed to be you to sign. I added, Day, plus my father's old debt. Old Joe's head snapped up. Lu Chen. I didn't look away from him. I lost the gamble. I admit Lu Qiming defaulted on his bet 3 years ago. I accept the debt, and I accept the name. As these words fell, the surroundings fell silent, leaving only the lingering hum of the stone-cutting machine. A glint of satisfaction flickered in Gu Chengxiao's eyes. You mean it? I flipped the acknowledgement form to its backside. Write it down. I pointed at Zhao Qisen, then at Qin Yan, and finally, at Ning Wan's camera lens. Let them all see all of them. Witness this. Zhao Qisen stared at me for a moment. And what about you making a winning cut gain? I looked at Gu Chengxiao. Day. I need the complete footage. And the warehouse entry exit records, tonight's delivery order for 30 million material batch, and Mr. Zhao's transaction contract. Gu Chengxiao didn't answer right away. Scared? I said. His smile went completely cold. Okay. The assistant added a few words. As I signed my name, the tip of the pen tore through the paper. Lu Chen. 2 words fell, as the characters fell, as if pressing him down as if on the stone-cutting table. Old Joe secured the dead parcel again. I redrew the lines. The curve bypasses the middle section, hugging the side skin. Many people couldn't understand it, but Qin Yan stared at it. for a long time. Just before Lao Zhou started the machine, suddenly said, "This line, your father once drew." My fingertips tightened, the sound of the knife rose. Mist sprayed open. This time, it was even slower. The blade edge inched its way along the line I had drawn, grinding into the surface bit by bit. The sound began to grow rough and harsh. Upon reaching the second layer, it fine-thinned. Drilling deeper, scraping noise suddenly skipped a beat. I raised my hand. "Stop." Old Joe stopped quickly. Gu Chengxiao snapped. "How many times are you going to stop?" I ignored it. Water washed over the knife wound. Beside the light green, a small patch of dark brown marks appeared. It didn't look like a natural vein. I wiped with my hand. The stone dust was smeared open. Half a number was revealed. 17. Old Joe dropped the cigarette from his hand. Qin Yan's face also changed as well. Gu Chengxiao instinctively stepped forward, blocking Ningwan's camera. "Don't take pictures." Ningwan was stunned. "Master Gi," I said, "stop filming." Zhao Chisen pushed him away forcefully. "Dei, why can't I take a picture?" The onlookers also snapped back to reality. "Serial number? Why would there a serial number on the raw stone? Isn't that something only sealed materials have?" Gu Chengxiao's face turned ashen. "Who said it was a number?" Spreading rumors after seeing just half a digit. I stared at Qin Yan. "Commissioner Qin, do you recognize it?" Qin Yan avoided my gaze. "With only half a number visible, I can't jump to conclusions." Gu Chengxiao immediately your gaze picked up. "Did you hear that?" He turned to the crowd. "Fie. Right now, I suspect this piece of material came from an unknown source. Lu Chen deliberately obtained sealed material from elsewhere, mixed it into the Baisha rejected pile, and tried to blackmail Baisha." These words sent at the turning point. I went from being the fall guy framed for the scam to a suspect in a material heist. Someone muttered softly, "Fie. It is not impossible. He picked the material, the one who picked it. 800 for sealed materials. That is too much of a coincidence." Zhao Qisen frowned. Ning Wan's camera wobbled. Gu Chengxiao was skilled at putting people on the spot. He knew that as long as the truth wasn't fully revealed, he could still splash the dirty water back on me. I was about to speak when old Joe suddenly turned and walked toward the tool room. Gu Chengxiao stared at him. "Uncle Joe, where are you going?" Old Joe ignored it. Half a minute later, he returned holding an old cloth bag. The cloth bag was a small, weathered cardboard box. He handed me the cloth bag. "Your dad left it. I didn't take it." "When?" Old Joe lowered his head down. 3 years ago." Gu Chengxiao's face completely changed. "Joe Quan." He called Old Joe by his full name. "Don't talk nonsense." Old Joe's hand trembled, but he still stuffed the cloth bundle into my hand. "I owe your father that much." I opened the cloth pouch. Inside was half a notebook. The pages were damp, some parts of it clumped together. On the first page was my father's handwriting. Lu Qiming's handwriting was not neat, and he always had a habit of dragging out the last stroke. I recognized it. I flipped to the page to the middle. A cut diagram caught my eye. Gray-black skin, side rub, curving around the crack. It almost perfectly overlaps with the line I just drew. I stared at that piece of paper, unmoving for a long time. No one around spoke a word. Gu Chengxiao suddenly let out a cold laugh. "What can half a tattered notebook prove?" Back in the day, Lu Qiming used this kind of stuff to fool a whole bunch of people. He looked at Qin Yan. "Commissioner Qin, shouldn't things involving sealed materials be handed over to the association?" Qin Yan hesitated for a moment. "By the rules, they should be sealed." Gu Chengxiao immediately reached out his hand. "Give it here." I closed the notebook. AD8. Wait. After the material is cut, seal the notes. "No." He said it quickly. I looked at him. "What are you afraid of?" Gu Chengxiao stepped forward. "Lu Chen, I've already given you a chance. Now that this material related to this sealed mining site is off limits for you, you have no right to touch it." Outside the crowd, a steady voice suddenly rang out. "He is right." Everyone stepped aside. Gu Wanshan had arrived, the chairman of Baisha Jade Industry and Gu Chengxiao's father. In Yunchuan Stone, gambling circles, many didn't even bother using his name. Call him Master Gi. He wore a dark gray tang suit, rolling 2 walnuts rolling in his hands. As he approached, there was not a trace of panic on his face, as if he were merely handling a trivial matter. Gu Chengxiao immediately called out, "Dad." Gi Wanshan didn't look at him. He first nodded to Zhao Qisen. "Say Dao." "Chairman Zhao, you were startled tonight. Baisha will give you an explanation." Zhao Qizeng's face was cold and stern. "I just want my money back. My money. You'll get it." After Gu Wanshan finished speaking, he finally looked at me. "Lu Chen." He let out a sigh. "Your father and I had some history with your father back in the day. I didn't want to put it harshly." I clutched the notebook in my hand. Silent. Gu Wanshan walked over to the dead parcel, glanced at the exposed half of the number 17. His gaze paused for less than a second, then moved it away. "Dai, this piece of material does resemble old sealed stock." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Gu Chengxiao immediately said, "Then it must have been Lu Chen who stole it." Gu Wanshan raised his hand. "Hold on." He looked at the crowd, his tone steady. "The Yunbei mining area sealed off a batch of high-risk materials 3 years ago. The sealing date was the 26th of July. The 26th of July was jointly managed by the association and the mining bureau. In theory those shouldn't have made it to the market. A muscle twitched at the corner of Chin Yan's mouth. I saw it. The 26th of July. The date on the last page of my father's notes is the 21st of July. The day he went missing was also the 21st of July. If it wasn't sealed until the 26th of July, how could my father have drawn the same tangent line 5 days earlier? Unless what Gu Wanshan referred to was the actual internal processing time. Or perhaps he had never been involved at all. I looked up at him. Chairman Goi has a very clear memory. Gu Wanshan's hand, spinning the walnuts, slowed slightly. ADSAD. Major events in the industry. Of course I remember. I said, my dad went missing on Lu Qiming. Disappeared on July 21st. He didn't respond. I added, but, then, why did he draw the cut line of this sealed material in his notes from July 21st? The air felt suffocatingly heavy. Gu Chengxiao said angrily, N9. Lu Chen, don't try to fool us with that shabby notebook of yours and play tricks. Who knows if you wrote it later? I looked at him. My father isn't dead. For 3 years, everyone said he had run away. They said, he died out there. They said he was too ashamed to come back. Only my mother and I refused to believe it. Gu Chengxiao sneered. ASAD Wendy. Not dead. Then why hasn't he come back? Why is he making you pay off his debts? Why is your mother lying in the hospital, waiting for the Giyu family to front the money? Every word of his hit the mark. My fingers went numb. Giyu, Wanshan sighed. Lu Chen, hand over the materials and the notes. For the sake of your father I won't hold you accountable for Steve Ailing, the materials. I gave a slight smile. The materials were picked from Baisha's rejected pile, with the seals still intact. If I were to steal them, I'd have to first break into Baisha's warehouse, then sneak them over to the scrap pile. All before your son forced me to make my pick. Someone couldn't hold back a laugh. Giyu Chengxiao's face darkened. Gu Wanshan's eyes turned cold. Young man, don't be too absolute in your words. I've already been forced to sign for 3 million by you guys like you, I said. What more room do you want me to leave? Zhao Qizhen spoke up at this point. Chairman Kui Dong, let's open the materials for public appraisal. Giyu Wanshan looked at him. Zhao Qizhen said, fun day. You said Lu Chen misjudged when I lost 30 million on the cut. Now he says the material was swapped, and a sealed serial number came out with so many people here tonight, and the live stream recorded. Let's have a public look. Giyu Wanshan said, nothing. I continued. I need the complete warehouse records, material intake and output receipts, transaction contracts, and original live stream footage. Gu Chengxiao sneered coldly. What qualifies you to ask? I raised the letter of admission of responsibility. You wrote it. Cut and raised. Public record. Zhao Qizhen. Zhao stepped forward. I want to see it too. Wanshan Gu remained silent for a few seconds. Yes, he agreed far too calmly. I knew there was still something he was weighing on him. A long table was set up quickly. Baisha Night Market has never lacked tables. Those selling rough stones, those cutting stones, those live streaming, and those arguing all can easily pull up a table. Gu Wanshan sat in the seat of honor. Qin Yan sat beside him. Zhao Qizhen remained standing, not taking a seat. I stood as well. Ningwan was still holding up her phone. Gu Chengxiao suddenly turned his head. Turn off the live stream. Ningwan was taken aback. Master Gi, there are now hundreds of thousands of people in the live stream. I said close. Her lips pressed tightly together. Giyu Wanshan spoke calmly. Since sealed materials are involved, the video cannot be made public. Ningwan's fingers paused on the screen. Finally, the main live stream went dark. Someone in the crowd immediately shouted, "Why's it off? Day dong. Guilty conscience." A moment ago, they were still having someone photograph Lu Chen signing the liability statement. Gu Chengxiao cast a cold glance around, and no one dared to speak loudly anymore. I glanced at Ningwan. She avoided my gaze. I didn't blame her. Everyone at Baisha Night Market knew she owed the Guyi family a penalty. The Guye family held her live stream contract. The warehouse records were submitted. A stack of printed sheets. Gu Chengxiao slid one of them over to Zhao Qizhen. Mr. Zhao, take a look. The warehouse outbound numbers, storage slots, and weights for tonight's shipment are all here. The procedure is flawless. Zhao Qizhen couldn't make heads or tails of it. He handed me the order. I glanced at it. Time of dispatch, 1932. The time I examined the stone was 19:27 minutes past 7. The missing 4 minutes in the middle were just enough time for a forklift to drive out from the back of the warehouse. I pointed at the weight column. Before the deal, that piece was 42.6 kilograms. I walked over to the iron tray and pointed at the ruin. Stone. This piece is registered at 40.1 kilograms. The assistant immediately said, weighing error, moisture error, all within normal range. I looked at him. Day, 20 by T, a 2.5 kilogram error, that's normal? The assistant froze. Gu Wanshan spoke. Weighing in the warehouse can sometimes be off. That doesn't prove the evidence of material tampering. I nodded. Then bring out the pre-cutting reweigh record. No one moved. Zhao Qisheng slammed the table. Take it out. Gu Chengxiao's face turned pale. Gu Wanshan remained composed as ever. Incomplete records are a management issue of Baisha, but Lu Chen, a flaw in management and swapping materials are two different things. He spoke very eloquently. Qin Yan also said in a low voice, for now, it only proves there is a flaw in the procedure. Gu Chengxiao let out a sigh of relief. I'm not surprised. The Guyi family has been rooted in Yunchuan for decades. They won't be crushed by a single slip of paper. I picked up the half-torn seal on the waste bag. And what about this? Gu Wanshan glanced over. Old seals. There is all sorts of stuff in the waste piles. There is blue paint on the seals. I said, Baisha ordinary warehouses are sealed with red paint. Old mining material storage facilities use blue paint. Gu Wanshan's eyes turned slightly cold. Qin Yan asked first, how do you know that? I didn't respond, because those words were written just before the missing pages in my father's notebook. Gu Chengxiao suddenly rushed over and snatched the seal away. Enough. He clenched the seal in his hand. Lu Chen, you're just a debt-ridden temp worker. First, you cost Boss Zhao 3 million on a failed jade, and now you're using half a broken seal to slander Bai Shay. Do you really think a few guesses can drag Baisha down with you? Zhao Qisen reached out his hand. Give me the seal. Gu Chengxiao stood still. As the atmosphere grew tense, a notification sound suddenly came from Ningwan's bag. The big screen lit up screen. It wasn't the main live stream. It is from another angle. The camera is low, directly facing Gengxiao's hand, gripping the seal. Funny fine of comments instantly flooded in. It is opening. It is opening. All to count. Just got a shot of the seal being torn off. Don't close it. Gu Chengxiao spun around sharply. Ningwan's face turned deathly pale, but she didn't turn it off. She pulled another phone out of her bag. I've turned off my main account. Her voice trembled. This is a backup account. Gu Chengxiao raised his hand to strike her. I grabbed his wrist. Let go, he snapped. The camera is rolling, I said. Gu Chengxiao froze. Ningwan gritted her teeth. I still have the video. Gu Wanshan's face darkened for the first time. Ningwan, think carefully. Ningwan's eyes reddened. I've thought about it for a long time. She clicked on the video. The screen showed the outside of the warehouse. The timing perfectly matched the missing 4 minutes of surveillance footage. The camera shook violently, as if the assistant had accidentally captured the scene, but I could see clearly. A small forklift from Baisha Jade Works came out of the back door. On the forklift was that piece of yellow salt sand crust I had seen before. Standing beside the forklift was Gu Chengxiao's assistant. Soon, another piece of rough material with a dry, crusty surface was pushed into the frontward. Zhao Qisen's face gradually sank. What is this? Gu Chengxiao immediately said. The video angle is incomplete. It doesn't prove anything. Ningwan interrupted him. There is more. In the next segment, a car flashed past the warehouse entrance. Yune, 7K, 19. Zhao Qisen quickly flipped through the photos of the contract. Day AAT. This car delivered the sample material to me this afternoon. Gu Chengxiao's assistant turned pale. Gu Wanshan shot him a glance. He immediately lowered his head. I asked Zhao Qisen, is there a secondary payment account in the contract? Zhao Qisheng frowned. There's a deposit for the sealed materials. Gengxiao told me to transfer it to a designated account. Account name. He flipped through his phone. A few seconds later, he looked up. Yunshan Consulting. A low voice muttered from the crowd. Isn't that Chairman Gu's company? Gu Wanshan's expression remained unchanged. Just a normal business transaction. I said, normal enough to have a 30 million contract go through Baisha, while the deposit lands in your private account. Gu Wanshan looked at me. Lu Chen, do you really think a few videos and a few accounts can convict Baisha? I said, no. I turned my head to look at the stone cutting table. So, let's keep cutting. Gu Chengxiao was almost voiceless. Don't cut it. Zhao Qisen looked at him coldly. Why not? Gu Chengxiao gritted his teeth. Sealed materials cannot be cut privately. I said, just now. You claimed I stole this. Once it is cut and numbered, won't you know if it is real or fake? Gu Wanshan's gaze was deepens. Lu Chen, do you understand the consequences of continuing to cut into it? I picked up the brass ruler. The edge of the brass ruler pressed against my palm. Cold and hard. All I know is that this piece of material can't be hidden away by you again by you. Lao Zhou stepped up to the cutting machine. Gu Wanshan turned his gaze toward him. Zhou Quan. His voice was calm, but old Zhou's back visibly stiffened. Gu Wanshan said, you've worked in Baisha for 30 years. Think carefully. Old Zhou remained silent for a long time. Then he said, 3 years ago, I couldn't figure it out. Gu Wanshan squinted. Old Joe lowered the cigarette from his lips, his hand trembling violently. 3 years ago, Lu Qiming also had me cut a piece of rough stone like this. The scene fell still. Gu Chengxiao shouted, "Uncle Joe, what nonsense are you spouting?" Old Joe didn't look at him. He said that piece of material was off, something was off. The outer skin had been treated, and there was a sealed with an inventory number inside. He asked me to cut it open for him and keep it as evidence. He lifted his head and looked at me. His were red. Halfway through the cutting, the Giyu family from Giyu showed up and showed. My heart sank bit by bit. Old Joe continued. Later, I signed the statement. It said Lu Qiming embezzled the client's materials, misjudged, and skipped out after losing the gambit. His voice was hoarse, barely audible. I took the money. I also feared the consequences. These past 3 years, I haven't had a single peaceful night's sleep. Gu Wanshan slammed the table. Zhou Quan. Old Joe's shoulders trembled, his shoulders shaking involuntarily, but he did not retreat. Tode, this cut, I'll finish it for his son. He pressed the switch. The stone cutter. Gu Chengxiao rushed forward. The men brought by Zhao Qizhen blocked his way. The scene descended into chaos. Ning Wan held up the backup phone, her voice trembling, but clear. Bisatia Jade is now preventing us from continuing to cut the material. Everyone on site has seen it. The blade fell. I stood beside Old Joe, listening to the sound of the blade. This time, it wasn't not just about hearing the crack. The echo from deep within the stone grew clearer and clearer. The first layer was deep, second layer, thinner, third layer, gently folded gently. It was as if the sound hit a layer of jade flesh running at an angle, and then bounced back. I murmured, a little slower, shift 2 millimeters to the left. Old Joe did as he was told. The sound of the blade steadied. The pale green spread, as water washed away the gray skin. A patch of deep cyan jade emerged. It is not bright green. Its light is heavy, sinking inward. Qin Yan took half a step forward. His face had already turned pale. I said, continue. Old Joe changed the wiping cloth. The third layer of skin was peeled back little by little. Next to the hat, 17, 2 letters appeared. Yai B, north of the clouds. Someone in the crowd, read it out loud. North Cloud, 17. Qin Yan barked. Stop. This time, it was he who called a halt. Everyone looked at him. I turned off the faucet and looked up. Deidi, committee member Qin. Do you recognize it now? Qin Yan's lips felt dry. Gu Wanshan said coldly, Qin Yan, be responsible for what you say. Qin Yan did not look at him. Stare at that piece of raw stone, like staring at a scorching piece of iron. After a long while he said, Yunbei number 17 vein was listed as a risk, sealed 3 years ago. The entire scene erupted. Zhao Qizhen pointed at Giyu Wanshan. Why is the sealed mining material in your Baisha waste pile? Giyu Wanshan said, the serial numbers can be forged. I nodded. Fei. So, look at the vein patterns. I flipped through my father's notebook. The last drawing before the missing page depicted a set of diagonal fine lines. 8 characters were written beside it. Echo returns in 3 folds thrice, vein slant in cyan. I had memorized this as a child. Back then, I found it merely awkward to pronounce. Now I finally know what it refers to. I gently tapped the dead rap's cut surface with the bronze ruler. Ding. Stop. Knock, again. Ding. The second sound was even softer the second time. The third knock landed on the edge of the pattern. Her voice was so soft, it was almost inaudible, yet it lingered long. I looked at Old Joe. Last cut. Old Joe nodded. I traced the final cut on the stone surface, following the lines in my notes. Giyu Wanshan suddenly spoke. Lu Chen. I stopped. He looked at me, his voice dropping low. How much do you want? The whole venue fell silent. Even Gu Chengxiao was stunned. Giyu Wanshan said, you want money, a studio, and medical expenses for your mother for the rest of her life. I can give you all of that. He slowly stood up. You're young. You have a long road ahead. Don't throw away your own future for someone who has been gone for 3 years. I looked at him. Daidian, I want my father's reputation restored. Gu Wanshan's gaze turned cold. What use is a dead man's reputation? I said, word by word. I want a living one too. Lao Zhou's knife came down. The final layer of stone skin was scraped away. The water flow turned a greenish gray. A set of diagonal veins emerged, fine and dense, deep blue-green, like an old leaf vein pressed into the heart of a stone. At the end of the veining, a complete serial number, YB-17, FC-032, sealed material. Ningwan's live stream chat scrolled so fast the Chaisha Ractors blurred, becoming unreadable. Qin Yan closed his eyes. The serial number is genuine. The walnut in Giyu Wanshan Gu's hand cracked with a crunch. There was no color left in face of Cheng Xiaogao. Zhao Qizhen took out his phone. Call the police. Gu Wanshan turned to leave, but several people were already entering from the entrance of He Night Market. They weren't Baisha. Security. The man at the front presented his credentials. Gu Wanshan, Gu Chengxiao, Baisha Jade Industry, is suspected of contract fraud, forging appraisal materials, and illegally transferring sealed mining materials. Please cooperate with the investigation. Gu Chengxiao's first reaction was to step back. Denke, why are you doing this? No one responded. As they pinned down by his arms, he suddenly shouted at me, Lu Chen, you set this trap all along, didn't you? I watched him. Dadi, you were the one who told me to pick from the scrap pile. His lips quivered. 一句话都说不出来. Gu Wanshan was more composed than him. Even with someone restraining him, he was still watching me. Dao, you're just like your father, you don't know when to stop. I took a step closer. Where is my father? Gu Wanshan let out a chuckle, a very light one. Can't you listen for yourself? He stared at me. Fai, go listen for yourself. I wanted to press further, but the economic investigation officers had already taken him away. When Gu Chengxiao was escorted past the stone-cutting table, he suddenly began to struggle. It wasn't just me. His eyes were bloodshot, red, and his voice cracked badly. Dad, you told me to cover the accounts with that batch of old materials. You said Zhao Qizhen was stupid and rich. You said Lu Chen was easy to push around, that his mom was in the hospital and her were in the hospital, that he wouldn't dare cause trouble. Gu Wanshan whipped around abruptly. Shut up. Too late. Ning Wan's backup livestream was still on. Hundreds of thousands of people heard it. In the dead of night, Baisha night market was sealed off. The stone-cutting table, warehouse records, father's notes, the dead core material core of dead cores, half of a blue lacquer seal, all were bagged up and taken away. Zhao Qizhen's contract and financial records were also handed over. Qin Yan wrote a temporary statement on the spot. Not many words, but enough. The number on the involved in the rough stone matches the registration rules of the sealed mining materials at Yunbei number 17, and further inspection is required. His fingers trembled slightly as he handed the paper to me. Lu Chen. I looked at him. He was silent for a long time, then said, I'm sorry. I didn't take those 3 words. I only asked. Dayendi. 3 years ago, did my father also wait for a whole day for a piece of paper like this from you? Qin Yan's face turned ashen pale. He didn't answer. Not answering was itself an answer. Old Joe sat by the stone-cutting shed, cigarette after cigarette. I walked over. He stubbed out the cigarette. What do you want to ask? I said. Where did my dad go in the end up? Old Joe rubbed his face. The back door of Baisha old warehouse. Who took him away? His lips trembled slightly. Gu Wanshan's people. I stared at him. Why didn't you say anything back then? Old Joe lowered his head. My grandson goes to the Gei family's school, and your mother's dialysis. The Gei family could block that too. I was beaten into fear, and I was greedy for that money. He buried his face in his hands. I'm not human. I didn't scold him off, and I didn't say I forgave him. I just asked, why is the notebook only half of the notebook? Old Joe looked up. Your father tore it in 2 halves. He pressed the first half into my hands and took the second half with himself. What did he say? Old Joe thought for a long time. Lay day. He said, if he couldn't make it back, he would wait until you were grown. The bronze ruler inching gauge in my hand felt terribly cold. The year my father went missing, I was 23. Not a child anymore, but in his eyes, maybe I would never grow up. Just before dawn, I went to the hospital. My mom is still asleep. The lights outside the dialysis room are stark white, without any warmth. The nurse saw me and said in a low voice, the Gia family hospital has rescinded the payment notice. I nodded. When I walked into the ward, my mother opened her eyes. She saw me covered in stone dust and paused for a moment. Did you stay up all night again? I hummed in response, sat down at the edge of the bed, placed that half notebook on my lap. When she saw the cover, her fingers trembled slightly. This is your father's. Yeah, she touched the cover. She didn't cry, just saying, softly, he is not a fraud. My throat tightened. I know. I've known all along. She stared out the window. The sky had not yet lightened, and her gaunt, terribly thin face was reflected in the glass. Let people say whatever they want. Your father called me before he left, he said. There is something dirty hidden inside the stone, and he has to dig it out. I looked up. Did he call you? Only 1 sentence. My mother closed her eyes. He said not to trust anyone in Baisha. I gripped the notebook tightly. Anything else? She shook her head. Then the call dropped. That morning, I sat for a long time. I sat outside the hospital room. My phone kept ringing. There were unfamiliar journalists. There were stall owners he knew from the old night market. Also a message from Ning Wan. She said the Giyu family's legal department had called her to threaten her. She had sent the recording as well. Zhao Qizhen also sent a message. Saidi, I will cooperate with the investigation. I'll testify to your innocence. I replied with a thanks. At noon, old Joe called me. He said that a batch of unaccounted sealed material remnants was found at the old Baisha warehouse. There is also a car, Unit 7K19. In the compartment's lining, there were traces of blue paint that hadn't been fully scraped off. By the afternoon, Gu Chengxiao's testimony began to surface. He shifted much of the blame onto Ji Wanshan, claiming the 30 million yuan gamble was orchestrated by Gu Wanshan, alleging that Baisha Jade's accounts were in its accounts, and Gu Wanshan had him use old mining materials to inflate the valuation, saying, I'm easy to control, because my mom is in the hospital, because my dad has old debts, because I've been enduring it for 3 years at Baisha night market. When these words reached my ears, I was repairing a copper ruler. There was a fresh dent along the edge of the copper ruler. Last night was too chaotic. I had no idea when it had been bumped. I sanded it down bit by bit, with fine sandpaper, after grinding until those old engraved marks became clearly visible. Before, I didn't understand. Now, with my father's notes spread open and comparing them side by side, I realized those engraved marks weren't scratched randomly. Each one points to a different cutting angle. Light cut. Turn the knife, avoid the crack. Listen for the second sound. My dad engraved the method on the ruler. It was as if he had left a path for me. On the third day, Baisha Jade Industry was officially sealed off. The news of the Gu family father and son being investigated spread throughout Yunchuan. Some say it is a relief for the public. Some say Baisha should have fallen long ago. Some also said that Lu Chen was a tough guy to have survived all that. I didn't pay much attention to those words. I made a trip to Baisha old warehouse. The warehouse door was sealed with tape. After the economic crime investigation team finished sorting through a batch of old items, they handed me a metal toolbox. This is what Lu Qiming left behind back then. The toolbox was already rusted. The lock was broken. I sat at the warehouse entrance and opened the box. There wasn't anything valuable inside. A few broken pieces of chalk, a dull file, half a box of moldy cigarettes. There was also an old mining token. The token was small, its edges singed by fire. The serial number on the front was worn down to almost nothing. On the back a line of characters was engraved. The knife is slightly lighter. Listening for the second sound. I stare at that line of text, staring at it for a long time. This was the first chant my dad taught me, but he only taught me the first half. The second half, right here. I turned the mining token over. A small folded piece of paper fell out from the compartment. The paper had already yellowed. An address was written on it. The Old Ferry, northern suburbs of Yunchuan. Below it, half a character remained. It looked like wait. I was still looking when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message was short. Ni. Don't come looking for me. Finish appraise the stones at Baisha first. I stood at the entrance of the old warehouse. The wind swept through the broken window, carrying a smell of dampness and stone dust. In the distance, the sign for Baisha night market was still lit, but beneath it, a seal had already been pasted. 3 years ago, my father disappeared from this place. 3 years later, I came back here to reclaim his name. But I know it is not over yet. White sand is just the tip of the iceberg. There are cracks below too, and impurities, plus the unopened black heart. I clenched the mining token in my palm, the bronze ruler pressed against the back of my hand, cold as the sound of last night's blade. There were still stones in Baisha I hadn't examined yet, but this time, they weren't forcing me to look. I wanted to see them on my own terms.